The subject is, why are people afraid of intuitional practice? Intuitional practice, sadhana, is the fundamental duty of everyone. Yet, very few people perform this duty. Ordinarily, people are afraid of doing sadhana. It is fear that keeps them from doing intuitional practice. But how far their fear is justified remains to be seen. At the very outset, they consider giving up worldly life as they consider this to be an essential requirement of intuitional practice. According to them, sadhana cannot be reconciled with their ordinary way of life. They regard emancipation as the privilege of ascetics, unattainable by normal worldly people. Neither is this a necessary requirement, nor does it appear to be logical. An examination of the advantage derived from adopting this course shows that there are only two. It provides solitude by removing one from contact with human society, which should help in one's institutional practice. It also removes one from immediate contact with the temptations and troubles of the world, which may help one to destroy the influence of avidya maya. It is only for these two advantages that one might consider forsaking worldly life essential for intuitional practice. It cannot be denied that the noise of the bustling world is a hindrance to intuitional practice and makes solitude very desirable, but it was explained earlier that the hindrances are created by avidya maya, which is one's own evil force. Merely living the human world and living in a jungle will not set one free. Avidya maya will go with you to the jungles and mountains and create obstacles in sadhana by substituting the howling of animals for the bustling sounds of human society. It is natural for a person to get used to their environment and not to be disturbed by it. For example, it would be impossible for a person from a lonely village to sleep in a house in Chaurangi Square in Kolkata due to the shrieking and screeching of trams and buses, while a person living there who is used to it will sleep soundly at night. Similarly, a person used to living in a city like Calcutta may find it extremely frightening to sleep in a lonely village even for one night. In the same way, one may find it difficult to practice sadhana in a noisy environment in the beginning, but after getting used to it, there would be no difficulty to go to the jungle, for solitude does not appear to have any real significance. Let us see if retiring to the jungle is helpful in avoiding worldly temptations. A temptation such as lobha, avarice, is a principle of avidya maya. It can only be overcome by reducing the influence of avidya maya through intuitional practice, sadhana. One will never be able to keep away from temptation without overcoming the influence of avidya maya. This is possible only through progress in intuitional practice, and merely forsaking the world and retiring to the forest will be of little or no avail. There is no doubt that if one stays away from objects of attraction, one has no chance of using them, and they may thus gradually lose their attraction, while if one is near them, one may be attracted towards them more. Yet, if a person is forced to renounce something, it is bound to cause them mental agitation. This agitation under greater restrictions may become unbearable and result in either illness or complete downfall. Forcing oneself to live worldly life only to keep away from its attractions will serve no purpose. This causes mental agitation and pain and may even bring about one's downfall. To give up the world merely for one doubtful advantage, instead of developing strength of character and firmness of mind, brings one to credit. The brave live among temptations in order to face and overcome them step by step rather than avoiding them due to their fear. Sadhana means waging war on avidya, and to win it, one has to face the enemy instead of running away or appeasing him. Thus, to give up the worldly life merely due to fear of its temptations is not a reasonable approach. To run away from normal worldly life due to fear of its trials and worries would be equally unreasonable. Living in society is troublesome, as one has to discharge one's obligations towards one's dependents. One has to earn money to provide for them. The agony of disease and sufferings of life must be endured, as well as the problems of poverty if one is not able to earn enough. All this creates the desire to one run away from worldly life and be free from all responsibilities except to oneself. But does this not amount to the evasion of one's duty towards one's family? One who runs away from worldly life avoids obligations and shows extreme selfishness. Evasion of duty and selfishness are evil actions which must have evil consequences, and unless the reactions have been completely experienced, emancipation is an impossibility. Running away from the responsibilities and worries of the world does not enable one to completely forget the family one leaves behind. They will certainly occupy the mind, and that will bring one under the influence of the moha ripu, attraction of avidya maya. Progress in intuitional practice is not possible if there is the constant influence of avidya maya, and in this situation one's mind will be constantly returning to the thought of one's family and the people whom one left behind. To say that those who can give up worldly life get beyond suffering and worry means that they overcome the influence of avidya maya, as worries cannot be avoided when avidya maya influences one's thoughts and actions. For them, living in society or in the jungle makes no difference. Is it not to overthrow the influence of avidya maya that one retires to the jungle? And if that has already been achieved, then to lead the life of an ascetic in the jungle or a normal worldly life will be immaterial. Release from the influence of avidya maya cannot be obtained by running away from it. One has to divert the mind towards subtlety to achieve it. For instance, constantly trying to keep away the flies hovering around a wound is not the solution unless an effort is made to heal the wound. Intuitional practice, as taught by a great preceptor, is the healing balm. It is with this that one can drive away avidya maya and gain emancipation. As the influence of avidya maya decreases, the temptations and troubles of the world cease to be an obstacle to institutional practice, as this is the only way to overcome avidya maya. It can easily be practiced within worldly life. Avidya maya will disturb a person in the beginning, but once defeated, it will not be able to create any hindrance to the pursuit of intuitional practice. To lead a worldly life and also to practice sadhana is very convenient. For a person living the normal life of householder has far greater conveniences and advantages available to him or her than has an ascetic who renounces the world. Retreating to the jungle is not a way to obtain relief from the trials and worries of the world. There is yet another great advantage in living a worldly life. It provides one with the opportunity to serve humanity, an important aspect of intuitional practice. This great opportunity to deny to those who live in jungles, the intuitional practice taught by a great preceptor should be practiced with faith and devotion. It can be practiced at home, and running away from the home and family is not necessary. As one overcomes Prakriti, the influence of avidya maya will disappear. Intuitional practice is the only way to subdue avidya maya. Hence, intuitional practice is necessary. To differentiate between different places or for sadhana, to consider one place more suitable than another, or to regard a particular spot as good and another bad, is to divide Brahma. Every place in this creation is the manifestation of the supreme cosmic entity Brahma, and to call one place good and another bad is to attribute these qualities to Brahma. If sadhana is based on the consideration of good and bad, it will never be possible for one to develop the feeling of oneness with the rest of creation. One will never be able to love others as oneself. To Brahma, every place is the same, and sadhana can be practiced anywhere. To give up the world and run away to the jungle is illogical. Not to practice sadhana for fear of having to give up the world is thus irrational. Brahmacharya is the other fear which deters many from practicing sadhana. They consider brahmacharya to merely mean celibacy or giving up of one's physical relationship with one's husband or wife. They are misled by the popular belief that it is otherwise not possible to perform intuitional practice sadhana. It is thus necessary to know the correct meaning of brahmacharya and also know whom one should regard as brahmachari. Brahmacharya means to introvert the controversial tendencies of the mind and to devote it completely to Brahma. To understand the meaning of brahmacharya clearly, one should know what is meant by the extroversial tendencies of the mind and how these should be introverted. Creation is the manifestation of the subtle in the form of crude objects under the influence of Prakriti. The crude creation is the world that one experiences through the physical organs, while mind is the subtle part of the creation. If the influence of Prakriti increases, one's mind is gradually converted from the subtle to crude. Under the influence of Prakriti, the mind becomes more extroverted and remains absorbed in the crude. Emancipation means releasing the mind from the influence of Prakriti or directing it from the crudeness to subtlety. Brahma is subtle by nature, and if the mind is absorbed in crude objects, it cannot be devoted to Brahma. To divert the mind from crude objects towards the subtle is to devote it to Brahma. This can be done by decreasing the influence of Prakriti on the mind, as Prakriti alone keeps it absorbed in the crude objects around it. Brahmacharya thus means to release the mind from the influence of Prakriti. And a brahmachari is a person whose mind is devoted to Brahma and is always absorbed in it. Such a mind is not attracted by the crude expressions of creation. It is absorbed in the subtle and spends all its time thinking only of Brahma. This state is attainable as a result of intuitional practice. One can become brahmachari only by practicing sadhana. It is only by means of sadhana that the mind can be freed from the influence of Prakriti and diverted towards the subtle to become completely absorbed in Brahma. Ordinarily, merely overcoming the sexual urge, Kamaripu, is considered as brahmacharya, but in reality, all the Sadripu, the 6 enemies, and Ashtapas, the 8 fetters, are extroversial tendencies. Of these 14, the sexual urge is only one, and merely overcoming this cannot make one follow brahmacharya. It is only when one is free from all the extroversial tendencies, the Sadripu and Ashtapas, collectively known as Avidya Maya, that one's mind can become brahmachari. The dominance of Avidya extroversial tendencies is so strong that it is not possible to overcome it except through intuitional practice. Those who try to attain brahmacharya without performing intuitional practice are wasting their time. Intuitional practice will by itself gradually divert the mind from crude to subtle, and a person will slowly become brahmachari. The domination of the Sadripu and Ashtapas, the extroversial tendencies, will diminish by itself. With the disappearance of their influence, the mind will no longer remain absorbed in crudeness. It is not necessary to give up one's conjugal life in order to begin intuitional practice. The attraction towards earthly things, born out of lust, calm, and attachment, moh, makes conjugal relation a necessity. Intuitional practice helps one to overcome this need. One becomes indifferent to it. So the question of giving it up for intuitional practice does not arise. It was said earlier that sadhana is waging war against Prakriti and defeating her. The force of intuitional practice is certainly greater than the strength of Prakriti, and by means of it, one can attain brahmacharya. However strong may be the domination of avidya maya, it can always be destroyed by intuitional practice. Intuitional practice, not taking a vow of celibacy, is essential if one is to become a brahmachari. It is necessary to maintain here the common meaning of brahmacharya. Mention here the common meaning of brahmacharya, that is to preserve virya, semen, sukra, dhatu, seminal fluid, and virya are necessary to nourish the nerve cells and nerve fibers. It is essential to preserve them in order to develop firmness of mind and intellectual sharpness.